I want to share with you how I do the prayer stack. I've had people asking for more clarity on how I do it and how I fill in the different prompts, and even what the questions look like. So I'm going to walk you through how I use it, and then you can see what it looks like. What you're looking at right now, this is the Warrior app. I come over here to stack. The one I select is the prayer stack. I do this every morning, first thing in the morning, and I have since the end of July last year, 2023. This has been the most powerful tool that has helped me reconnect with God by doing a couple things. One, starting my day with Him. I sit down, I take everything to the altar, I ask for guidance, and in this format and in this structure, God's been speaking to me. And I've made decisions about where to live, how to homeschool the boys, how to love my wife better, time and time again over the last 8 months because of that. So I click on Prayer Stack. It says, God is listening. What do you have to say? And then I click Begin Stack. What are you going to title this prayer stack? So here I'll typically put in something that either is top of mind, it could be the day of the week, it could be how I'm feeling. So it could be, oh, Sunday morning. Something as simple as that. It just gives me a placeholder. For this exercise, I'm not going to fill the entire thing in. I'm just going to give you a voiceover of what I do. So I'm just going to go ahead and move through that. Who or what are you stacking? So now typically I will take something that is top of mind. That's a trigger. And this is either an event, like a what kind of thing, could be a feeling, or it could be a who. The who could be me, it could be my wife, it could be God, it could be anybody. Just anybody that comes to mind. You fill that in. Go to the next. In this moment, why has God triggered you to pray? So I'll fill in what's going on with me. And maybe gratitude. It could be frustration. It could be irritation. Whatever it is, I'll just be like, hey, like this is what's going on. This is what triggered me to pray. I fill that in. And then what's the story you're telling yourself created by this trigger about God and the situation? And so here I'll write more of a narrative style form or just write down some notes. Then describe the single word feelings that arise for you when you tell yourself that story. So the code, which really is what underlies the entire stacking process, is comprised of four main components: facts, feelings, focus, and fruit. Facts is the truth. Feelings are how you feel about that. Focus is the story, and fruit is what you want. So when it's asking for the single word feelings here, it's really, okay, you're telling yourself this story. If you were to distill that down into a series of individual feelings, what would you feel? I feel bummed. I feel angry. I feel anxious. I'm worried. I'm happy. I'm excited. Whatever those single words are, just drop those down. So normally I'll put them in and I'll use a comma to separate out the different words. Now we get to what are at least four things you want God to know. Take a deep breath. 3, 2, 1. Ready to continue? Yes, let's go. Now, one other thing that I often do, though not all the time, but I'll often do, is I will put on some music when I'm doing the prayer stack. And I like to do music that doesn't have words. And the reason being is it just kind of gives me something in the background to kind of stir my soul to keep me focused, but without words to distract me or pull me off course. So I have some favorite songs, and then I click that on and it gets me in the mood, and then it helps me also just focus as I'm going through it. That's a bonus tip. Now, what we're doing in these, what are at least four things you want God to know, is that I will take everything that's on my mind and just lay it out. You're going to get the same prompt 4 times. I want God to know. And I'll jot down almost journal-like things that happened the day before. It could be, oh God, thank you for that person who I who I found who found me on social media, and then they happened to be in town. They came over to my house. We had a barbecue with their family, and just kind of pour out like that story. Or it could be like, hey, I want God to know, like, hey, we moved to California. We still have the home in Tennessee. We know you've got it. Is there anything that I should be doing there? Or it could be something going on with the kids, the marriage. So I'm just starting to like create these containers to capture this. So putting it in there. Oh, by the way, this is just a Grammarly thing here. I want God to know, again, same thing, just pouring it out. You could think of this as taking everything to the altar, just clearing out the mind, clearing out the stories, capturing everything that's going on. So this then becomes almost a journal. Is there anything else you want God to know? So now I can have more of these I want God to know prompts that'll just continue if there's more things. If I have 5, 6, 7, 8, if I just want to keep going, typically I'll do 4. So I'll be like, nope, I'm ready for the next section. And then here is, what do you want to share, ask, or communicate to God? Take a deep breath. Ready to continue. Yes, let's go. Now, this is also a place that if you wanted to, you can create a little bit of a pause and reflect and pray. So let's go. Dear God. All right. This is one of my favorite spots. In this section, I will write about what I feel I have questions on. And I will begin to write, and I'll begin to create a dialogue with God. This space, you could write a letter if you just wanted to pour some things out, but I've already done a lot of that pouring out. Now I'm entering into a dialogue. And so I will put questions here. And as I put the question, I'm just going to expand this so I can return key through. As I put a question, then I'll do God, semicolon, and I'll wait. I'm sorry, God, colon, and then I'll wait. And God will begin to speak to me. I'll be able to hear his voice. And I'll write out what he's telling me. And then when I'm not hearing him anymore, if I have a reflection, I want to respond to what he says, I have another question, I'll drop down and then I'll separate it, and then it'll be me again. And then I'll write something, and I'm creating this running dialogue. Now, the weird thing is your head might initially say, well, how do I know that's God and not me? And you'll know it's God when, 1, you're listening with that intention to hear from him, and 2, you begin to hear things that you wouldn't tell yourself. Whether it's things like of affirmation, words of faith and courage that he's dropping on you, or sometimes asking you to do things you would not ask of yourself. And when you see that come through, it's kind of eerie, but it's exciting because you're also hearing from the Spirit. And what the word is dropped on you, the revelation that's coming through, capture it here. Here's the beautiful thing. Some people look at the Bible as the Word of God, which is true and it's inspired. But when you actually read it, many of the people in the Bible did not have the Bible to read. They only had the opportunity to have direct communion with God and speak to him directly. They didn't have scrolls. They didn't have books. There was no printing press. They weren't sitting around and just reading. What they had was the opportunity to enter into conversation. And if you look at the life of Jesus, he would get up early. He would be up all night. He would be praying with the Father and then getting divine downloads on what he should go do and what he should go say. That's the model for us to follow. Jesus said, follow me. So often we get caught up in worshiping him and we forget to follow him and do what he did and teach others to do the same. So that's what I do in this section. And this is where I get the wisdom and downloads and insight for making really big decisions in my life. So I'll close that out. And it's all right. You've just given worship to God. Now let's see what you've learned. Take a deep breath. Another moment for pausing and reflecting. Ready to continue? Yes, let's go. What is the singular lesson on life you are taking from this prayer stack? So here I will distill down the lesson of everything that I've poured out, of everything that I was spoken to God and everything that I heard from him into a short sentence or paragraph. So I'm trying to distill it down to a lesson. And think of this as, how do you distill it down to a lesson that could then be applied to every other area of life? Let's say God tells you something about your body. Well, what is the distillation of that lesson that could then be applied everywhere else? Now, what I do with this is where I will generate a quote that I'm going to post on my social media for the day. So it's really the distillation of my prayer stack becomes something that is useful for me to put out and share with the world, with my clients. So that's what will go there. And then next, what is the most significant revelation or insight you're leaving this prayer stack with? And why do you feel that way? I will use this to now write out a longer multi-paragraph version of the lesson, or it could be even something different than the lesson that I picked up going through the prayer stack. In this season of life, what I'm using this for is also to write up content that could be used and shared as a post or a blog. And that's just because of what I'm doing as a warrior trainer and building my business, Yellow Brick Method, is I'm looking to harness this process and time with God, and then you flow straight into a creative writing process. But if you're just using this for your own benefit, just capture some more things here that you're picking up as you reflect back on the prayer stack and what God was speaking to you that morning. I recommend doing this in the morning because it sets the tone of your entire day. And by putting God first in my day, I'm making him a priority. And every other decision I make throughout the day has already been improved and enhanced because of that time I spent in the morning. Do you want to change the current stack title? So let's say you went through all of this and then it really had nothing to do with the title initially put. So you can change it. I typically don't. I typically just kind of leave it in there and roll. What immediate actions are you committed to taking leaving this stack? So the stack framework is you're going to stop like we did. You submit to the facts of your life, to what's going on in your mind. You take everything to the altar. You're submitting to what God's telling you. You're struggling, which is sitting there and wrestling with what is the lesson? What is the revelation? What am I trying to hear from God? And then you strike. The actions are the strike part. It's not intended to be an exercise of just writing. It's like, what are you now going to do based off what you just heard, based off what you just learned, based off what was just revealed? So you can put action items in here. The way this software works, it captures those actions items and puts them on what they call a hot list. Think of that as a holding place for items that you're going to take action on. So you always want to leave the place where you go through a stack with action. So I'm going to go ahead and just put a period in there. Do you want to add this action to your hot list? So if it's something that you want to put on the list of things to do, if it's a yes, it'll take it over there and put it there. For this video, I'm going to say no, because I'm not going into that part of the software today. Are there more actions you feel committed to take? So you may have more than one takeaway. If there are, you hit yes, and it'll give you that same prompt. I'm going to hit no, just to flow this through. Then what I have the ability to do is I can then share this stack. I can share it with, so what I have my private clients do is they will share their stacks with me so I know what's going on in their lives. And then when we have our weekly coaching calls, I will have a repository of up to 7 or potentially even more stacks if they're doing more than one stack per day. I will have this rich knowledge of what's going on in their life. If they're sending me stacks every day, I can interact with them. I read their stack. I can send notes and texts back to help and guide them throughout the week, making it a very rich and robust coaching experience, way beyond just one time of talking every week. And so here they can share their stack with me directly in the software through the chat feature. You can copy this out, drop it into a text, whatever you want to do. It gives you the ability to export the content that you just created. So that's the prayer stack. The prayer stack for me is a way of structuring the time that I spend with God, but it's just a container. You can fill in, and I do fill in, all the details. It just gives me an opportunity to take everything to the altar, to pause, to reflect, to ask questions of my Father. The number one thing that I take away from warrior training, and my number one desire for those who work with me, for those that believe in God, and for those who want to, is I want to give with them the opportunities to develop certainty of communion with God. And what does that mean? That means a knowing that they're sitting with their Father and hearing custom instructions and content for life. It's not about reading a book that has generalities. You're hearing directly from your Father, just like Jesus did, just like the prophets did, just like many people in the Old Testament and the New Testament. They heard directly from God, and that gave them specific insights, wisdom, and direction for living. The other thing is this turns your life into the richest content of an experience, because you're taking things to God that are on your mind, your emotions, your facts, your feelings, your stories. Your stories become the things that you then examine, and you examine with God. And there's nothing more powerful than turning your own life into the richest learning environment possible. Yes, learn from others, but don't neglect to learn the lessons that you're gathering directly. It's the most expensive and it's the most valuable. All right. I was closing my eyes as I was just sharing that last part, and the screen went dark, but hopefully it captured all of that. This is something that if you follow this through, it has the potential to change your life. I taught this to my 12-year-old son, and the first time he did it, he got it. I've taught this to clients who are going through the darkest moments of their life, and it transformed them. So I encourage you, deeply encourage you, give this stack framework a chance to work in your life. The results that I've experienced have been nothing short of life transforming. And here's why. Because as you examine the truth of your life and sit with God, in truth and in relationship with God is where all true transformation takes place. This is personal development in its highest form, because it's personal development with your Creator. It's transformative rather than just improving. It can change how you think, how you operate. It can change your personality. It can change how you walk. Why? Because you're spending time with God. And when men in the Bible spent time with God, they looked different, walked different, and spoke different. And that's available for you too. All right, enjoy this, and I hope to see you soon.